It was about a year and a half ago that I led my last continuing education live event for Intentional Interministry Network at the Baptist General Convention of Texas. Our events always kind of had the same flow. We would start the morning with a big name speaker, instructor. We had Gene Wilkes, president of B.H. Carroll Seminary. He has a book on servant leadership that is still in print 30 years later. It's just wonderful. He did a great job. Then we had a great lunch. And then we gave an award for interim of the year, and that person got to speak and give us some pointers on things that they have found helpful in interim ministry. And then we moved into the afternoon session, which is dialogue, it's support, topic of the week, and I had brought the topic. It was a selfish topic. I said, let's talk about how things work for you in retirement, because I was heading there. And it was interesting, the group was divided in two. We had one half of the group that were like me. They were either just retired or about to retire, and their question was, can God still use me? Who would want me? Why would anybody want me in retirement? And then the other group said encouraging words to them because they said, oh, no, this is amazing ministry. But they were like 10 years or so into retirement, wondering if they had served their last church. Because they said, why would somebody want me now at my age when they look at me? That sort of thing. And then Wallace Watkins spoke. I'll even say his real name, Wallace Watkins, one of my heroes. Wallace Watkins said, guys, I'm 82 years old. I'm in my sixth interim, and interim ministry has been the highlight of my ministry experience. Who's to say that God won't have that experience for you, that these will be the best ministry years of your life? And I got to tell you, if I had extended an invitation, the whole group would have come forward at that moment. But there's always one, right? There's one that can just throw a damper on the whole thing when everything's going good. And so George spoke up. He goes, well, I just can't take it anymore. I just got to say this. Why are we even talking about retirement? There's nothing about retirement in the Bible. God doesn't say you're retired. We should always be serving. I said, George, are you drawing Social Security? And he said, yeah. And I said, that's all we're talking about. We're not talking about being done. But you know what? The moment was gone. But you know what? George was also right. The way that Paul puts it can be found in Philippians, the 3rd chapter. And when you start with Paul at the beginning, he starts talking like, oh, George Clooney and oh, brother, where art thou? What are my bona fides? He talks about, I'm a bona fide Jew. I was, because what? I was following all the rituals. I was following all the rules. I was even persecuting Christians to maintain the faith that I grew up with. But then he had this Damascus Road experience. Then he had this season where Jesus healed him, saved him, groomed him, and then released him. And he ends by saying, and I'm suffering with Christ. There's my bona fides for my Christian experience. And so we pick up with that in verse 13. And in verse 13, Paul begins by saying, brothers and sisters, I do not consider it myself yet to have taken hold of it. It sounds a little bit weird, taken hold of it. What's he talking about? What he's saying is, I have just spent all this time telling you about my bona fides. What a wonderful Jew of Jews I was. What a great Christian I am. But I'm not there yet. I'm not all Jesus wants me to be. I haven't become sanctified. I am still struggling doing the things that I shouldn't do and not doing the things that I should do. I'm the chief of all sinners, he says elsewhere. He's saying I've not yet arrived. And if Paul, the person who, wrote most of our New Testament letters, if he would say this, then certainly I would never say I've arrived this side of heaven. I'll never be able to say that. And neither will you. And neither will this church. And I could preach this sermon in any church, but I'm preaching it to First Granbury and to the transition team, that we've not yet arrived. And that's why churches enter into an intentional interim. It's a weird season of time. It's an interim which every church goes through if you have any history at all. But it's weird because you can do some things that you couldn't do during a normal interim, that you can't do when there's a pastor. It won't threaten the pastor, his ego, his position, his income, his family. You can take a look at yourself and say, what do we need to do now? And that's what Paul continues with, because he says, I've not yet arrived, so what should I do? Well, he says there's one thing, but then there's two things. But that's okay, because it's like a coin. These are two sides of that coin. And the two sides that he talks about begin with this: forgetting what is behind. And that's what intentional interim ministry does. Sometimes you have to go back in your history and look at what's behind you that's, brought you up to this moment in time. And I don't know what those things are. I suspect some people on the transition team might think of some things. But we need to go back and say, in our background, what do we do with our past? Usually there's two things you can do. You can celebrate it. There's some wonderful things. And sometimes when you celebrate wonderful things, you have to say, yeah, but that's over and done with and we need to go on. Now, sometimes you celebrate and say, that's our DNA. We need to keep that and make sure we continue it, but we'll only know that by looking backwards. And sometimes you have to mourn some things. In order to recover, to let go, Requiem for a Nun, the author says that the past is not dead, it's not even past. It lives with you always. And so sometimes you have to make a concerted effort to let things go. What those things are, how we go about looking at them, what we do with them, I don't know. But then Paul says you don't just look backwards, you also have to look forwards. So in that 13th verse, after saying, forgetting what is behind, he says, and I am straining forward towards what is ahead. This is a time that we can think, God, what is your will? What do you want us to do? Put these two together, and sometimes intentional interim ministry, we ask the question, who are we? That is, what has made us who we are up until this point, all this past stuff. And then we ask the second question, who, God, do you want us to be? And that's moving forward. I don't have the answers to those questions. I don't know what to do. Transition team, let's be honest, you don't know either. Everybody's going to have ideas and we're going to pursue. But the way transition team work happens, it's different from most committee work in churches and what we do historically. See, a lot of times what we do is we have an issue or a problem or something we need to talk about. We give it to a committee and they take it. And after a while, they come back and say, okay, we figured out what to do. All in favor, say aye. But intentional interim ministry, it's from the ground up. And the first thing, team, that we're going to need to do is to listen. And I don't know how we'll do that yet. We'll figure it out, but we'll be reaching out to the church to say, you tell us. You tell us what we need to talk about that's already passed. You tell us what we need to do as we go forward. And no one person will dominate. It'll be a church-wide effort, but as we talk and grow, the Holy Spirit will say, this is God's will. And we will say yes or no. But hopefully, we will say yes, which is the first couple words of the next verse, because the next verse says, press on. I sign letters with press on sometimes. It's just God talking through Paul to tell us, don't stop. You've got to be lifelong learners. You've got to be lifelong servers. That God is not done with this church. If we are not done with this church, we must press on.